Hello everybody, this is the grade 11 theory unit 6A. Today's topic is classical dominant sevenths, and then later on we're going to look at compound intervals. So as usual, I'm just going to go through the odd example from the learning guide. I've got in front of us on the board here. This is taken from your theory guide for this unit, but it's a little bit, I think it's on page 2. So I'll just read through the other pages, and any pertinent information we'll just discuss those as we go. So what is a dominant seventh? Well, it's a 4-note diatonic chord based on the dominant degree of a major or minor scale. So in other words, it's the dominant triad that we're familiar with. So if we're in C major, we're basing it off the dominant note of C major, which is G. So that would be our root. We need a third, we need a fifth. So our B and our D would be third and fifth respectively. But with a dominant seventh, we're basically adding a fourth note to that triad. So we're creating a chord now. So now we have a third on top of the fifth, basically just another third. So the chord is designated as a 5/7. It's a seventh because the interval from the root to the fourth note is a seventh. So root, third, fifth, seventh. And if we're looking at our stacked thirds, we go major third, minor third, minor third in terms of what's taking place with the intervals. So when you voice a dominant seventh in the grand staff, you don't need to double any pitches because, again, we've got 4 notes, we have 4 voices. It works out very well. And so you can see in that example on the next series there, there is a dominant seventh for C major. This time we're voicing it in the grand staff. And you can see that similar to how we're voicing our triads we've learned previously, so long as the note that is in the bass, your bottom pitch, is represented by your labels, basically. So in root position triads, we need to have the fifth, the dominant note of C major, in the bass. Okay. Once we've established that, the upper voices, they can be placed, respecting voicing rules, not crossing of parts, and getting into different ranges and extending ranges and things like that. So we don't want to be doing any of that. But basically, you don't have to go in the same sequence. So root, third, fifth, seventh. It could be root, seventh, third, fifth. It could be, if in root position, so long as the bottom note is in the correct location, your upper voices can be placed according. You can see in the next example, F sharp minor. Remember, in a minor key, we're raising that seventh. We cannot do these dominant sevenths without a raised seventh for minor keys. We don't get the necessary major third when we're basing on the dominant. So the dominant note of F sharp minor is based on a C sharp. We need to have an E sharp above that C sharp. Otherwise, if we have a minor third, we cannot do the dominant seventh. So this one's voiced. You can see we've got our C sharp. And then above that, we've got the seventh, actually, in this example. So it's going root, seventh, third, fifth. The E sharp in the alto voice and the G sharp in the soprano voice on the top, which is the fifth of that chord overall. So you can see the root note is in the right location. Upper voices, again, we have some flexibility there in terms of where we want to place those. So moving on to page 2. So we can invert dominant sevenths, just like we can with triads. Now that we have an extra note to play with, we're actually going to be adding another inversion to the whole mix. So when the inversions are shown, stacked in a single clef, the figured bass interval relations are easily seen. We'll just read through this and you can see what's taking place. So in C major, we had the short form. We used the short form 5/7, but really, we remember from before, when we were voicing a triad in root position, we had it as 5/3, and that would refer to the distance from the root to the third and then the root to the fifth. And basically, when we spell it out, we determine, 5/3, that's root position. So when we're doing figured bass, remember we just omit those 2 numbers. We do need to include the 7, however, because that differentiates between a regular dominant triad and a dominant seventh, which has that 4th note. So we need to make sure we differentiate between those. First inversion, same idea. It's going to be designated as 6/5. If we had it as just 6 on its own, as in dominant but a 6, again, there would be no differentiation between a dominant seventh and a regular dominant triad in first inversion. So we need to include the 6 and the 5, and that's simply referring to the distance from the root to the fifth and the root to the sixth. And again, that's highlighting the fact that we have a 4th note. Similarly, second inversion is going to have 2 numbers associated with that as well. So we had 6, 4, and 3. But we don't need the 6 in this case because, again, we don't want to be adding any confusion with this one. So we're going to be using 4 over 3 to designate the distance that's taking place with second inversion triad. So, and then you can see in third inversion, it's going to be 4 and 2 are the numbers that get used. And those correspond to those intervals that we can see. The major second, the augmented fourth, the major sixth, and then the minor third, perfect fourth, major sixth. And anything that's redundant is going to be omitted. So the sixth in both second and in third inversion is going to be omitted to differentiate. So when we're finished, we can see that we're left with 4 groups or 4 sets of numbers, and the easiest way to remember this series is with a telephone number. So we've 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 4, 2, and this is root position. This is first inversion. This is second inversion, and this would be third inversion. Okay, so that phone number can help us to recall basically the order in terms of when we're doing our inversion. So, on the example on the board, we'll just go through this and see what's happening here. So I've copied this one from your guide. So a couple things. When you're voicing the dominant seventh inversions, you always want to write down the key. You always want to remember that you are writing dominant seventh chords built from the dominant degree. Okay, so we've established we're in B flat major. We're not basing this on B flat. Remember, we immediately go to the fifth note of B flat major, which is F. Everything is built on F. So all of these inversions, all of these dominant sevenths contain the same notes, F, A, C, and E. In this case, E flat rather. So they're all part of B flat major, and all the inversions are always going to contain the F, A, C, or E flat, but in different locations depending on the inversion. There are 4 pitches, so remember we don't have to double anything. And then voicing on the grand staff, follow the same spacing rules as we did for triads. So remember, distance between tenor bass can be anything you like, and the upper 3 voices, anywhere from unison to an octave is generally well accepted. Remember that a dominant seventh and a minor key will have that raised seventh, and that gives us the necessary major third when we're doing our dominant sevenths that we need to have. So I've gone ahead and I've labeled these, but you can see in this example, the only difference, and I didn't do the minor tonic minor comparison, but you can see that basically it's the same thing, it's just the accidentals are changing. Okay? So if you have trouble seeing the chord in this type of voicing, it could be helpful to just pencil in all of the specific notes. So we can go ahead, so we'll just maybe do that for this example. So B flat major, basing it on the F, F, A, C, and E flat, those are the notes that we need. Let's go through and let's determine which. So the F is going to be the root note. We know that because we are in root position. That's what this is telling us. So we know F must be in the bass. Good thing it is. So let's look at the next note. So F, A would be the third, and we find A is here. That's the third. We need C as the fifth. So here's C up here. And then that leaves us with the E flat as the seventh note. So you can see this one's voiced root, third, seventh, fifth. Root's in the right spot for root position. Upper voices we're fine. We're obeying all the rules, so we're all good on this one. Let's have a look at second inversion. So it's designated as 5, 6, 5. This time we should have the third in the bass, and we do as the A. And let's work our way up and find out what else we have. So we have our F here, that's our root. We've got our C here, that's our fifth. And this time the seventh is in the soprano voice. So this example, third, root, fifth, and seventh. Again, you can see we've got all those notes. They're just arranged in different locations. Upper voices again, you can arrange those how you like, so long as your root note is, or your bass note rather, is reflective of the inversion that you're in. Second inversion is dominant with 4 over 3, and so that means we need the fifth as the bass, so we should have a C, which we do in the bass as our fifth. Moving up to the tenor voice, our root is here as the F. The A is what follows that, and that's our third. And then on top we've got our seventh. So this one's 5, root, third, 7. And then last, in third inversion, this one does have the seventh as the bass note. So our E flat's in the bass. Our C is the fifth. F is the root. And A as the third. So this one's voiced 7, 5, root, 3. So you can see, again, when you're looking at these and trying to determine the notes and where things are, you can just put little pencil notations in to help you kind of follow along what's taking place. You can see in the next example in your guide, again, we're basically, we can illustrate, you can see these ones are voiced differently. It's not going in the sequential, it always is, it's still in sequential root, third, fifth, and seventh. But it's again, the root note isn't always going to be, following these sequences. We can move those things around. So long as we're adhering to our correct voicings and ranges for all of our parts, that's fine to write it in various. So there's more than one answer, or more than one correct answer when we're voicing dominant sevenths and putting these things down. But that's basically it for dominant sevenths. We'll go back, we'll do an example or two in a little bit, but we're going to move on to now the second part of today's lesson, and this is compound intervals. So, with compound intervals, I'm just going to do this while I'm speaking. We're familiar with the concept of intervals. I mean, we've been talking about them ever since grade 9. Even with these examples, we're always referring back to intervals. And we remember that that's simply the distance between two pitches is what we talk about, or what we use to define what an interval is. So a compound interval, up until this year, everything we've been doing with intervals, they haven't been greater than an octave. They've always been, anywhere from a perfect first or a perfect unison up to a perfect eighth or even an augmented eighth. That was as far as we got. We never got anything beyond that. But we do know that there are intervals that are larger than an octave. We just saw a few with that dominant seventh exercise. So a compound interval, they work the same way as regular intervals, but basically it's just an octave higher than what we're used to seeing so far. So they have a number 7 added to them. And adding a number doesn't change the quality, so a major second is still a major sounding interval, but when we write it an octave higher, it becomes a major ninth. We just add 7 to whatever number we have. And remember, regardless of the quality, it's just adding the number 7 to the question to give us the new example of that. So you can see some examples in your guide. An A flat to a D, augmented fourth, and then when we write that D above an octave higher, it becomes an augmented 11th. A perfect first, written an octave higher, will become a perfect eighth. We're adding 7 to each of those numbers, and the quality is staying the same. That's basically it for compound intervals. We're going to go, it's best if I go through a couple examples of these as we go. But first we'll do a dominant seventh example. We'll do like maybe a minor key example for a dominant seventh, and then we'll do some compound intervals. So I'm just going to, you can get the squeaks on video. There you go. Okay, so let's pick a key. Who would like to choose the key we're going to do? Do I hear somebody saying, okay, let's do the key of D major? Great, all right. So D major is the key. Actually, yeah, we'll stick with D major, that's fine. Okay, so D major, and we're going to voice a dominant seventh. So in this exercise, you're asked to voice dominant sevenths on the grand staff for every key, major and minor. Follow the circle of fifths, write the root version of the chord, followed by another inversion for each key. Fully label and figured bass using the text blocks below on the staff. So we're going to voice, so for every single dominant seventh, every single one, every key that you do, you're going to be doing this one. This is root position, remember. So all of your major keys, all of your minor keys, you must show me this one for each of those. The second one you show, you only have to do 2 for each key. So the second one that you illustrate can be an inversion of your choice. So let's do a second inversion. Let's do that. Okay? And then so my next one, circle of fifths, okay, I've done D major, I'm going to go on to A major now, right? So same thing, A major, dominant seventh, and then choose an inversion. And then after that, okay, E major, root position, dominant seventh, pick an inversion. So root must be for each one, but you can illustrate, again, your choice for any of the other inversions. Okay, D major, first step, let's get a key signature in there. So we need 2 sharps. Once we've done that, the next step is to determine what's the 5th note of D major. D, E, F sharp, G, A. A is our 5th note. Let's build our thirds. Let's stack them on up to and including the 7th. So A, C sharp, E, G natural. Those are the notes that we need. And I'm actually going to go ahead and root. And I'll just do it down here. So we need our A, we need our C sharp, we need our E, we need our G. So those are the notes that we need. For this dominant seventh, in any inversion, we must have those notes represented. We got the 4 notes, there's no doubling of pitches. Now, we're in root position on this. We know we're going to be doing this every time. So we need to have an A, and I'm just going to draw my A is my bass pitch. So right away I've taken care of A. Now I have a choice. I can do whatever I like with my upper voices. So I can arrange this different ways. Remember, I can have any distance. Well, I'm just going to, for the sake of today's example, just going to put my 7th as the next note. So now I need a C sharp and I need an E. Well, I'm going to put my E here and, oh, don't need to have the C sharp because we are in D major. We already took care of that with the key signature. So there's a dominant 7th. That one's in root position, right? A is the 5th. We have it in the root. Upper voices, they can be any sequence that we like. So let's have a look at this in second inversion. Remember, first inversion would be the 5 with a 6-5. Second inversion is going to be 5-4-3. So in this case, we're actually going to have the 5th as the root note, which is an E. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to put my E here. So right away I've done the 5th. So now I need to have I need a root, I need a 3rd, and I need a 7th. I'm just going to go ahead, put my root there. I need my 7th. I'll put it there. And then I need a C sharp again. Well, this time maybe I'll just mix it up a little bit. I'll put my C sharp here. Okay, so there's my dominant 7th, this time voiced in second inversion, and that's it. So now I can move on and do my next key. Okay, so there's an example of D major, basically, and root position, and then showing what the inversion is. What I'm going to do, I'll just do an interval, compound interval question or two. We'll do one. Let's see how squeaky it is going to be this time. But yeah, sure. I'll pick an example. I'll do a treble clef example. And I'll do a bass clef example on the same. Oh, we're missing a line there. Treble clef. I'm just going to do one of these. Bass clef's there. Okay, so let's do an augmented 12th above that note in the treble clef. And let's do a minor 10th above this note. So, same as always, when we're determining intervals and trying to solve these, actually we're going to do, you know what, we're going to do one below a note in the bass clef, just to mix it up. That way I can show two things at once. So I'm actually not going to do that question. I'm going to do, we'll do a minor 13th, and we'll do it below that note, which is an A flat. So this one we're going to do, and I'll differentiate. So this is above, and this one's below. Okay. First step, just like all other interval questions, we're going to identify the pitch we've been given. So it's a D in the treble clef, and we're going to use the same procedures that we always have for determining what intervals and how to solve these. So we're going to assume we're in a major key. So we're going to assume we're in D major, and then we're asked to draw an augmented 12th above that note. Well, that's a lot of distance to try and determine, so it might be simpler to collapse that interval for a moment just to help us get our bearings and reference it in terms of where it's being placed in the D major scale or key signature. So 7 from 12 gives us 5. So we can think of this question as an augmented 5th above a D. That's a little bit easier to kind of grasp conceptually. So what's the 5th note of D major? Now the augmented factor, we know it, because it's a 5th, it's either perfect, diminished, or augmented. In this case, it's augmented. What's the 5th note of D major? Well, we just looked at that in our dominant 7. That's an A natural. So we know that D to an A is a perfect 5th. However, I need to make it an augmented 5th. So D to an A sharp. So the A sharp would be the note that I want. And that's taking care of the augmented part. Now I have to factor in the fact that it's not a 5th, but actually it's a 12th. So I need to take this A sharp, and I need to place it an octave higher to give me that 12. And if I count the distance, I should be good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So we're good on that one. Remember, it's an augmented 5th D major, so it's raising that 5th note by a semitone. So that's all we're doing when we're doing them above a note. Now, intervals below a given pitch, we know how to do those. We learned that last year. The difference with compound, obviously, is that it's greater than an octave. So if you remember there's a couple more steps that is involved with this question. So A flat is the pitch, remember, in the bass clef. So we're on an A flat. We're asked to write a minor 13th below an A flat. Let's collapse that interval. Let's make it a little bit more manageable. Let's take 7 from 13, and we are left with the number 6. So we need to draw, for a moment, what's a minor 6 below an interval? That's a question that we would have had last year in grade 10. And we remember when we're solving intervals below a pitch, it's easier to think of them, again, as intervals above a given pitch. But when we're doing that, we have to do the inversion of that. So if this is a minor 13th, we've taken 7 away. We've determined, okay, that's going to be a minor 6th below. The inversion of that, remember, the numbers add to 9, and the sign reverses. So a minor 6 below would invert to a major third above. Okay, so what's a major third above an A flat? And the answer is C. Great, so we have our C. But instead of last year how we would just bring it down an octave, we have to bring it down an additional octave. Okay? So that 13th below is actually going to go there. Okay, and again, we can count our distance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13. And just like when we solved intervals last year below a given pitch, once we've determined what the note is, we can use this to check our answer and see how we did on this. So now we can treat this as a new question. What's the distance from a C to an E flat? Well, we know C major, no flats or sharps. 13, take away, well, in this case it would have to be the 9, or to give us the third. So then we're looking, okay, so it should be an E flat, and then remember that it's a 13th above as well. So 2 ways to look at that. It's using similar methodologies that we have in the past. But there you can see how we solve intervals above and below when they're compounded, a given pitch. And for your learning guide, it's just basically going to be, so mu score, you're going to do your dominant sevenths, and then you're going to do these following interval questions in mu score as well. So it's kind of a two-parter, this one. And that's basically it. Thanks, everybody, and we will see you back soon for Theory Unit 6B.